Well, hey there, welcome. And as always, thank you for choosing to join us today. We're super excited. We've got a guest today and we're excited to jump in. But first, I would love to invite you to head over to wherever you're listening and give us a rating or a review and just tell us the value that Blended Family Breakthrough is bringing to you. So would you help us to continue to reach other listeners by you just sharing your experience with us? Okay, so I've got a question for you. Have you ever felt like you couldn't be okay unless everyone else was okay?
How would you answer that, honey?
Definitely.
Or maybe you found yourself overgiving, overfunctioning, or trying to keep the peace so much that you end up feeling exhausted or resentful or disconnected from yourself.
That's right. Those patterns can show up in any relationship, but in blended family life, they can get especially complicated. They can impact your marriage, your parenting, your relationship with your kids, and even how you interact with an ex.
That's right. And that's why we're so glad to welcome Michelle Ferris to the show today. Michelle is a psychotherapist, codependency expert, and anger management specialist with a passion for helping people break free from toxic relationships. Her YouTube channel has over 3 million viewers, where she's known for her practical tips and expertise. She's written several ebooks and courses for creating healthy relationships at work.
That's right. And in this conversation, Michelle helps us better understand what codependency really is, how it can show up in blended family dynamics, and why healthy boundaries are so important.
If you've ever struggled with people-pleasing, rescuing, fixing, controlling, or feeling overly responsible for someone else's emotions, we think this conversation will bring clarity and hope.
That's right. So we'll hop into our conversation with Michelle just on the other side of the intro. Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting and, yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Well, hey, Michelle, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so glad to have you on Blended Family Breakthrough.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here. Thanks so much, Kim and Mike. Yay!
Yes, glad you're here.
Yeah. Hey, Michelle, why don't we take a couple minutes for our listeners to just get to know you, maybe share a little bit about your story with us.
Sure. So I became a therapist largely because I knew my family was dysfunctional even as a little kid. And so, I just knew like something isn't right here. And I was a super codependent kid, had no social skills, so relied on excessive gift giving, really weird stuff to try to get friends. So by the time I was a therapist, I really wanted that focus once I got into my own recovery because I saw that it gave people hope. Like, oh my God, you can actually get better and not have to stay stuck in these patterns. So that's why I love the work I do and focusing on codependency.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've got some personal experience, as do we.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And that definitely drives your passion to help others, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I
so
love
good.
that you do the same work.
Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah,
Michelle.
I love that piece of wanting to give people hope. I remember the first book I read on codependency way back when I was in a very dysfunctional marriage. And I remember reading that book, just being glued to it, going, what? That's me.
Yeah.
It was just eye-opening when you understand it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You know, it's interesting. Sometimes people really think they know what we're talking about when it comes to codependency, but there are different ideas floating around out there. I wonder, Michelle, could you give us what your definition of codependency really is?
Sure. And I agree. There's probably dozens of definitions. So I really like to simplify it where it's basically when you're over functioning in relationship, whether you're helping too much, fixing, controlling, rescuing, But you're doing that in hopes of getting the love and approval that you can't give to yourself. So it really sets up this one-sided emotional dependency dynamic, which is, pretty difficult to sustain in adult relationships.
Yeah. Okay. So it's that over functioning in the
Hmm.
relationship to try to convince myself that I am loved by those
Yeah.
around us. Yeah.
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 What we
Well,
do is the big thing, not who we are.
okay. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. What we do, not who we are. Wow. Yeah. I really like that. What's the difference between that and just being a nice person?
Yeah. I love this
Yeah.
question because I think this is so important because so many people miss it, right? They think, well, I just have a big heart. I'm just being generous. But really, the difference is if you can give without it, one, hurting you, or two, leading up to a resentment, then it's probably not codependent. But if I'm giving to you and waiting for you to acknowledge it,
Mhm.
and you're not doing it the right way, or I don't matter because you're not texting me back, then I know that, okay, there's some codependency going on because the giving
Mhm.
is more conditional and more based on who I am versus just giving out of choice.
I see. So if I'm giving freely with a happy heart, I'm not leaving with resentments. I'm not in an unhealthy way sacrificing something I shouldn't be.
Right.
Then I'm in nice person mode.
Yeah.
But as soon as I cross that line, now I'm teetering on the edge of codependency.
Yeah, if there's an expectation.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, for
You need
sure.
to notice what I just did, or I'm going to sacrifice myself for you. So you should really love that about me. But when they
Mhm.
don't, we get really frustrated because we don't know another way to connect and have a strong sense of self.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I remember a season in our journey where I really set some things in me aside to
Hmm.
try and fix things for Kim,
Rescue.
Sure. Yep.
especially around emotional challenges and that
Hmm.
kind of thing.
Hmm.
I often, one of the ways I describe it is in that season of our relationship, like I couldn't be okay if Kim wasn't okay.
Right.
Is that
Right.
related to codependency?
Oh, definitely. And I loved your episode where you guys shared this because I
Mm,
think that is a lot I see in my male clients is that they feel responsible when their wife is upset and they get
mm,
anxious. And I know my husband does the same thing. Even though
sure.
we both been in recovery a long time, my initial upset always causes a little bit of anxiety for him because he
Yeah.
Yeah.
feels responsible. And it's like, Jim, it's okay. Like, you're not
Yeah.
responsible for me at all. Let me have my upset. But it's that conditioned response of, I need to make sure my spouse is okay so that
Yeah.
I can be okay. And of course, that doesn't really work well long term.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know in our dynamic, it would kind of hijack your life.
Oh, yeah.
Like you were
Sure.
fine, but
Sure.
because I wasn't so fine, you had to put your life on hold
Hmm.
Right.
and kind of sink into my pit of despair,
Yeah.
even though you were fine.
Yeah.
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 That was just our pattern,
Hmm.
Michelle. How do you
Mhm.
see codependency showing up in maybe we could say the broader blended family context?
Mhm. So there's two ways I see it coming up most. But first, I want to say that codependency can show up in any relationship, a friendship, a
Mm.
coworker, a spouse, a child, whatever, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's non-discriminatory. But
Sure.
the two ways it shows up in blended families the most, for in my experience, has been between the biological parent and their child, and or the exes. So
Mhm.
the child one is a little bit easier, right? Because, when there's a divorce, sometimes we feel guilty or we feel like, oh my gosh, maybe I never had good boundaries to begin with. So the divorce just compounds that because divorce is hard and blended families
Mhm.
is really hard to navigate.
Yep.
Sure.
So I think those two are the biggies for me.
Yeah.
Mm.
Let's unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like maybe
Sure.
take those one at a time and
Hmm.
maybe even share some different examples or
Yep.
maybe if you have any case studies that you're able to share or anything like that. What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah.
So with the parent and child, I think there's two ways parents usually do boundaries when there's codependency. One is rigid, where they want a lot of control because they're thinking that that's the way to do it. Maybe they grew up with that. Or there's a total lack of boundaries where this is the
Mm.
people pleaser parent. This is the parent that has a hard time setting boundaries or saying no to their kid because they don't want the conflict.
Yeah.
So for me, I tend to be more on the people pleasing side of parenting. So
Okay.
I had a strong-willed kid in my own experience, and I had to learn the hard way, like, wow, you know what? I can't be setting boundaries every 5 minutes because I'm not going to last.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going to get worn out.
Yeah. So I think sometimes we have to kind of create a balance of, what's really important in terms of boundaries and what isn't. But when it comes to codependency and between parent and child, a lot of times we're trying to protect the child. We feel torn between our new marriage and our child. And how do we now blend that into this new family unit when, honestly, we're usually more ready to do that than the kid, right? Because we're in love. We want the
Mhm.
marriage to
Yeah.
work. We want a nice family unit. But our kids sometimes, I know my son, in my own story, I got remarried when he was, I think, 8. And,
Okay.
it took him a while. I mean, he liked Jim, but he wasn't super excited.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
He just wasn't. And I had to let that be for a while. And uh, I think that's such a delicate thing to navigate, that codependency, when we feel like we're over loving our kid or over protecting them
Mm.
because we don't know how to navigate this really intense maze of blended family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's this kind of people-pleasing side of you that you said
Hmm.
you used as a lens for parenting this young boy, and then
Yeah.
Jim comes along, you guys get married. How did that impact you and Jim? Are you willing to share that?
Oh, yeah. The best thing I did looking back was I told him up front, I said, I want you to develop your own relationship with him, but I don't want you to be the disciplinarian. And I tell you, if he had said no to that, I may not have married him because I
Okay.
didn't want that dynamic of I'm the man and now you're going to listen to me because
Yeah.
Yeah.
because my strong-willed kid would have rebelled big time
Yeah.
against that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they sort of were quiet in the background. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay. That was okay, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because his dad was still in the picture. We had a very amicable divorce. So
Yep.
we saw my ex-husband quite a bit. And
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that was a real delicate dance. And
Mm.
I had to really honor that, it was hard to see my kid not be super excited about Jim, my husband, because I wanted
Yeah.
that, but I also knew it was going to take him a while to warm up. And it did. And he ended up doing it, but it was a long road, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You mentioned, that your ex was still in the picture and I'm
Yeah.
assuming your son moved back and forth between homes like a lot of kids do. I'm wondering if that is an opportunity for codependency to emerge when we see our child going off to the other home
Hmm.
and we're left without them. Because often we see parents kind of falling apart when their child leaves. Like
Mm.
either they aren't able to function or do much because they're just
Hmm.
preoccupied, overwhelmed with
Yeah.
anxiety and concern, or they interject themselves over into the other home. They're constantly wanting to
Mm.
call and check on their kid and make sure they're
Right.
safe and okay to ease their own discomfort.
Mm.
Right.
What would you say to that through the lens of codependency? That just kind of popped into my mind.
Yeah, no, that's really important because I think that if there is that level of anxiety, then it really needs to be addressed. And the parent, that's why, a lot of therapists don't work with codependency. So you really need to, one, identify it, and hopefully this episode will help them do that, and
Mm-hmm.
then find the help they need so that they can start to go, okay, why am I so anxious when my kid leaves, right? What's
Yeah.
causing that? Because why am I overly invested in what's happening in the other home? Now, granted, if there's safety concerns or intense dysfunction,
Right.
Of
then that's going to be
course.
natural.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's really an important point because that is part of codependency, is recognizing where you end and your child begins. And if there's
Mm.
no good line there, then you're going to feel like your heart is leaving when they go to that other parent's house, which is not a good
Mhm.
way to live.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's this intense insecurity of, well, I need to be checking in with my child when they're
Yeah,
over there because I need to know I love them and I'm thinking about them and I miss them.
right,
Hmm.
right,
And then, that really impacts the child.
Hmm.
So,
right. For me, that's where, and I know we're not going to necessarily go down this road, but if you can be amicable with your ex so that you have open lines of communication, so you can be
Hmm.
flexible. I mean, we had lots of flexibility and it served us both. But every situation's a little different. But if you can
Yeah.
have that amicable connection after, I think it goes a long way
Hmm.
to thwarting that codependency because everybody's communicating.
Absolutely.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, a while back we had some guests that were talking about these different relationships with our ex, and like
Yeah.
what we're aiming for is cooperative colleagues. Like we
Yes.
want to be able to cooperate, we want to be colleagues for
Right.
the benefit of the child.
Right.
And as soon as we slip into, boy, I'm not okay when my child isn't around,
Right.
then we're actually sabotaging that opportunity to be the cooperative colleague we need to be for the benefit of the child.
Yeah, because no one shows up well
Right.
when they're anxious.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's really, I mean, if you have 10 years coming with that, it's going to
Uh,
be really hard to maintain. And
Hmm.
that's why even if you have a dysfunctional ex or a toxic ex, I always say start yourself. Like be
mm,
flexible. Do
Hmm.
something nice, say thank you, put back the please and thank you in your conversation. I mean, little things
Sure.
like that go in a long way to being able to have that amicable connection.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that you see codependency showing up in two ways in blended families.
Hmm.
One was between bio-parent and child.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about exes, how do you see
Yeah.
it between exes?
Hmm.
So if the ex is an addict or alcoholic, that's probably the most common form
Hmm.
Mm,
because, I have a lot of clients that I've worked with over the years where, like I have had one where they were, just so dysfunctional and it was so hard for them. But they had to look at, okay, how can I detach and not get codependent with my ex by feeling like I have to take care of them or, cut them a lot of slack when really it's hurting my new family. I mean, it's very hard when you have active addiction, but that's why I always recommend Al-Anon in those cases because,
Yeah,
you're going to need that targeted support.
for sure.
But it could also be someone who's narcissistic, right? Who
Hmm.
is really self-centered and very difficult to work with. And,
Hmm.
that's going to create its own limitations. But I do think we can do a lot by setting a positive tone and having, really good boundaries because, you're going to need to have good boundaries if somebody is narcissistic or very toxic.
Absolutely.
yeah. And I think sometimes that can apply to an ex-spouse who maybe
Hmm.
isn't struggling with addiction or personality disorder, but is just under functioning in life. So
Yeah.
they're not able to keep a
Yes.
job, and there's that
Oh, yeah.
financial strain. And so, you feel obligated to jump in and help
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
other under functioning ways in life where you can get kind of roped into caring for them more than you should.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's a really important dynamic as well, for sure.
And often the kids get roped into that as well. Like I
Hmm.
have this under functioning parent that I need to care for
Hmm.
and take care of and
Right.
be there for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Earlier you mentioned this kind of pendulum swing almost. There's like
Hmm.
two extremes of this codependency. There's the rigid side, kind of that
Right.
control side,
Hmm.
and then there's that sacrificial or
Yes.
inappropriately sacrificial side of people pleasing and whatnot. We've talked
Hmm.
about this side, the sacrificial side, quite a bit. What do you see? I think when it comes to the rigidity and the control side, when it
Yeah.
comes to exes and codependency.
This is like usually the person. I remember I had someone at church that just personified this for me several years ago, where it was all about them being right. Like, no,
Uh,
you're doing it this way. There wasn't
Yep.
a lot of leeway in terms of hearing other people's opinions. It was their way or the highway. I mean, that's a pretty rigid person, but that is also can be codependent because underlying that is that low self-esteem where they're trying to matter. They're just trying to do it in a very controlling way. So it looks
Yeah.
a little bit different than the people pleaser for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I
So,
think we experienced that in my dynamic
mhm.
with my
Mm.
former spouse was he always wanted to paint himself as the superior parent,
Yeah.
who knows it all and
Oh
we have to
boy.
always do it his way because he knows the best
Uh-huh.
and really didn't my opinions didn't even matter.
Ugh.
Man,
Yeah.
so if I'm a listener, you just hit me right between the eyes, right? Because
Right.
it's like if if I recognize that, oh my goodness, my default mode is that I need to grab the reins, I
Mm-hmm.
need to control and kind
Mm-hmm.
of dictate the decisions that are happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in that other home, they're not so much dysfunctional. We don't necessarily have addiction or those other things we just talked
Mm-hmm.
about going on. Then maybe I actually need to look in the mirror a little bit and go, how am I feeling about me?
Yeah.
Is
Right.
that right?
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
because like
definitely.
like you just said, it has to do with this underlying insecurity. I'm going to pump myself up and
Right.
be the one in charge and in control so that I can feel better about myself.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I noticed with people like that, like with this w woman at church years ago, I would try to compliment her and say, you really are a good leader. I would compliment what she does well because I could tell she'd relax. Like
Mm.
Mm,
like she
Yeah.
got a little bit of that validation, so I could kind of work her a little bit better.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because
You have
it's
to
like,
figure it out.
yeah, you got to go with what works. And sometimes people just need that validation to kind of relax in and then maybe be a little bit more flexible. Maybe.
Mm.
Yeah. If
Okay.
you come right out of the gate challenging them, then they're going to push even harder.
For sure.
For
For
sure.
sure.
For
So
sure.
yeah,
And
that's a good
especially with an
strategy.
ex, it's
Yeah.
like if you can start off with, I really appreciate that you were willing to switch days with me because I had this appointment. Um, we don't think of saying that in a divorce because we're usually pretty guarded, but things like
Mhm.
that can really go a long way to having healthier boundaries between you with the kid.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that simple little affirmation
Yep.
can
For
ease
appreciation.
the need for control from the other side.
Yeah, because they feel heard and acknowledged, even though if they're doing it in a puffed up way, you're going to have to do your little Oscar winning performance to do it sometimes because we're going to act as if. But hey,
Sure.
you
Yep.
know what? That's okay. It's like
Yeah.
when you smile, you actually end up being happy, even though you're faking it. So
Yeah, that's right.
it works.
Yeah.
Kill them with kindness.
Yeah.
That's right.
But
That's right.
and often behavior does precede feeling, doesn't it? Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Right.
Well, so we've talked about a bit about this over-functioning piece of codependency and the
Hmm.
difference between that, just that and just maybe being a nice person or whatnot, and also how this shows up in blended families. And we've used the word boundaries several times
Hmm.
today. So I'm wondering how, for those who are listening, how can we help simplify boundaries in a blended family?
Hmm.
Uh, Maybe we just start there. How can we simplify boundaries in a blended family?
So I think it comes down to what your non-negotiables are, and it depends on what kind of kid you have. Because if
Hmm.
you have an easygoing kid, this is probably going to be a lot easier, right?
Mm,
But if you
yep.
have a strong-willed kid like I did, I mean, I really had to like chores, no. It was
Yeah.
not
Mhm.
something because he would fight me every time. And, he was a
Mhm.
good kid, but there were certain things because of his strong-willed nature that was I willing to battle? No, I wasn't willing to battle it. So that becomes the discussion between you, both parents, is okay, what are the boundaries that are really, really important that we need? And
Hmm.
usually that's around respect,
Mhm.
around treating each other well. You know what I mean? Things that
Yeah.
are, to me, the hierarchy of, I can deal with an unmade bed, uh, but not
Hmm.
name calling. Like,
Mm.
no, that's not okay.
Mhm.
So, but each couple has to decide what that is. But the
And when
other
you say
thing,
the parents need to agree, you're talking about parent and step parent in the same home. We're
yeah,
not talking about exes anymore.
no, we're talking about
Right.
like our our new family blended unit. Uh,
Yeah.
because, between the two people, there are probably going to be differences, right? One person
Right.
might be on the
Mhm.
rigid side. One person
Mhm.
might be on the I don't want to set a boundary side. So,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the beginning is okay, just start talking about it. Like, what would
Mhm.
boundaries look like for you? Because if you're in a situation where your kids have not adjusted yet, right? They're still adapting and getting the lay of the land emotionally, then you're not going to want to put down a lot of hard boundaries because they're going to freak out and rebel and hate the
Yeah.
step parent.
Right.
And to me, that's why I always went back to the goal of what's my primary goal here? To preserve the relationship. That was the
Mm.
primary goal. It wasn't to get my way, not to have, oh, I'm good at boundaries. Look at me. No,
Mhm.
it was about
Mhm.
how can I have an amicable home life for my kid?
Mhm.
And if you
Yeah.
have that as the goal, then it's much easier to go, well, my kid's not going to tolerate that. Can we put that one like later?
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
because each person knows their kid and I think having that discussion and recognizing the level of stress the kids are already under because of the huge change is really a lovely way to honor them and you because you're all in this new found family together.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of when we first started blending. And I
Yeah.
was a very permissive parent who did not have any boundaries, I don't think,
Probably a little
and
codependent in the
yes,
relationship.
definitely,
I can relate.
definitely. And Mike comes along and he said to me one day he felt disrespected when Annika left toys all over the living room
Mm,
and he couldn't even find a place to sit without moving her stuff around. And I thought, disrespect? What? Well, that doesn't sound like disrespect to me. But I really needed to hear him and understand his perspective.
hmm.
And I did that. And then he also needed to hear my perspective of what I was willing to do and not willing to do.
Yes.
Right.
Because eventually I'm like, okay, I'm willing to hold her accountable and set a boundary of in the common space, let's put toys away and keep it nice and neat and tidy for everyone. But in her bedroom, I'm not going to worry about that. If she has stuff
Yeah.
all over her bedroom, that's not a hill I'm willing to die on or a battle I want to
Hmm.
fight every day.
So I just shielded my eyes when I walked by her bedroom door.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
did?
But
Which
the fact
is
that
fine.
you could have that discussion,
Mm.
and make it neutral and make it, hey, let's talk about this. I mean, that to me is what sets, couples like you
Mm.
apart because you're
Mm.
willing to come to each other, not from a place of blame, but from a place of, hey, let's talk about this. I realize you just don't like this, but what's that about for you? And that is such a lovely example of how to do this.
Mm. Oh,
It took
thanks,
us a
Michelle.
while to get
It
there.
did, yeah. Yeah, we tell the story in a nice, succinct fashion, but it didn't exactly work out in that way.
Well,
It
sure.
took a while. It took a while.
Even your messy stories, I'm sure, are helpful because people need to learn that too, right? We're all kind of,
Absolutely. Yeah.
got to realize we're not alone in this process.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
wonder if we
yeah.
could try something. Let's camp out on that for just a second. So,
Okay.
so I can't, Kim comes and we're talking, and I'm like, man, I just feel really disrespected because I can't
Yeah.
find a place in our own home to sit down with all these toys and all this stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
What would a codependent response to that sound like? Let's say Kim slipped into codependency in that moment.
Uh-huh.
What would she have done differently?
Oh, should I answer that or should you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I would love for you to know what you would say, Michelle.
So the rigid person, right, might want to control it. Let me tell you how we're going to fix this and then get super anxious around that. Or the
Mhm.
the people pleaser would do whatever they can to back off and go, "Oh, okay, 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 okay. I'm sorry." And take it on themselves as, "Uh-oh, my kid made the mistake, so I'm a mistake," because that's the blurred boundary, right,
Mm.
between me and my kid.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And so it gets really tough because then you're triggered with shame and you're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm upsetting my spouse versus wait a minute, right? This is an
Mm.
oops, this is a
Yeah,
problem, but it's nobody's fault. But yeah, that to me is those two ways it could
Yeah.
go in codependency.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Interesting.
want to chase that one for just a second.
Okay.
So, so if Kim in that moment is like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'll take care of it. I'll make sure Annika takes
Right.
care of things and that kind of thing. But then when she tries to set a boundary with Annika and says, you need to clean up your toys, and Annika throws a fit and doesn't want to do it,
Right.
what does the codependency person do then? Because
Well,
now
then
I've got this
yeah,
problem with the child.
Mm-hmm.
right. Well, that's where the codependency recovery comes in, right? Because if you're trying to set boundaries with your kid and you can't because it's too big a leap, right? And sometimes I find that's what's happening is the codependent person is trying to set a boundary for the sake of their new spouse, but it's something they've never done before, or it's too big of a
Yeah.
leap. So of course they're gonna crash and burn because they don't know what they're doing yet. So that
Yeah.
it may be a baby boundary at first. She may have to go back
Hmm.
to you and say, well, you know what, that one I don't it didn't go well. But what
Hmm.
if we diluted that and did something, a little on the same track, but a little bit smaller steps so I can gain some success. So
Yeah.
you're working towards it, but it's just a little bit less scary for the parent.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're making that slow progress there, hopefully in an agreeable way,
Right.
particularly between
Right.
parent and step parent, right?
Yeah. And hopefully, the parent who's codependent or both are doing their own recovery. Because if you're doing that and you're getting that support, then you're absolutely looking at these issues on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. We often talk about that position as being kind of the trapped teammate. So,
Mm,
Kim's in the middle between me and Annika. I'm saying, I want these toys cleaned up. And Annika's
yep.
saying, I don't want to clean up my toys.
Right.
And I'm
So that
stuck.
puts Kim in this
Yeah.
trap teammate position where, look, I just want everybody to get along. I love you both.
Right.
But if I lean one direction, I'm disappointing the other. And if I lean the other direction, I'm disappointing that person. And so no matter what I do, I just can't
Mm-hmm.
win. What
Mm-hmm.
I hear you saying is like codependency, when I'm truly dealing with some challenging codependent behaviors in myself, that might amplify that trapped teammate position and make it really uncomfortable and create a lot of chaos for the whole home. Do I understand
Yeah.
that right? Yeah. What
Yeah.
would you add to that?
I think that's where you validate and go, you know what? Like, I mean, I joke all the time with my son that I have not been the best boundary setter because I was never one to do a lot of rules like I saw other people do. I didn't really agree with that. That wasn't part of my personality anyway.
Okay.
But like that is part of what we do is if I got stuck with something, I would tell him, you know what? I'm working this out. Like I got to get back to you on this and just
Hmm.
own my struggle because sometimes even with our mate or with our kid, they'll be like, "Oh, really? Cool. I can
Hmm.
handle that because I'm not tagging them with it. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, I'm in process and I'm doing the best I can, but this is hard." You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's not a quick fix. It's not a, oh, I'm going to set a boundary tomorrow and everything's going to be perfect. No, it's an ongoing journey, as you both know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So a little bit of vulnerability goes a long way, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. And especially
Great.
if like you're really scared to set a boundary, sometimes I'll even have clients start with that and say, I'm kind of scared to talk to you about this, but would you be willing to hear my point of view? Because then you're kind of owning your fear up front. And if you know that it's
Mhm.
a safe person, most of people are going to go, of course, I don't want you to be
Yeah.
scared. And that reassurance is going to
Mhm.
allow them to go further in their boundary setting.
To step
Yeah.
into it. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
do too.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we could go back to something you said a minute ago. And I'm going to try and remember how you put it, where I think it's so important to understand. You said that's where the line gets crossed,
Hmm.
where your child is your child, you're you, and when the lines get blurred and crossed. Can you say a little bit more around what personal boundaries actually are?
So to me, if you have a kid, then you love the kid, but is your identity wrapped up in that kid? Like
Mm,
if the kid is out of the box, right? Um, and they have special needs or they don't get good grades, like all those bumper stickers. I have a kid on the honor roll. Oh, I used to hate seeing those. They would just be my pet peeve because so many parents don't have that.
Yeah,
And that's not the only measure of success for our kids is their
that's right.
grades, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But that to me is the test is if our kids can struggle and we don't take that on to mean that we're a bad parent or a bad person. But that line gets blurred when we don't have that strong sense of self. So if our kid is out of the box and we feel responsible for that, we feel we've caused that, that's not really fair because every kid to me comes out of the chute their own way. And,
Yeah.
sure, there's parenting and environmental factors that contribute, but temperament, is temperament.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to a parent who sees their child struggling
Hmm.
around divorce? They've gone through trauma.
Right,
I mean, that's what it is.
right,
Divorce is a traumatic experience for
right.
children. And so the parent, you're coming out of it, you're getting through it, you're kind of on the other end,
Hmm.
and maybe you're even blending now, but
Right.
your child is still hurting and struggling. I mean, we see so often parents blaming themselves, carrying around
Right.
so much guilt, feeling like their kid is, you know,
I've ruined them.
yeah, they're
Mm-hmm.
Right.
flawed, I'm
Right.
a failure, all of that.
Yeah.
How can they move towards helping themselves
Yeah.
to set healthier boundaries in that kind of form of codependency?
So this is where to me, step 4 in 12-step programs would be perfect. Like doing a little mini inventory of how did I
Mm-hmm.
do in the divorce? What were my actions? What affected my kid? What affected my, the
Hmm.
Yeah.
outcome in an honest way, not to beat ourselves up because there's probably some good you did, right? I mean, it's
Yes.
Right.
never all bad. And then validating that for your kid. Like, I know this is hard for you. I know you didn't want the divorce. I mean, I can't tell you how many times my son in the back seat would say, "Why did you get divorced?" And I would always say the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. We were better off as friends. And he,
Mm-hmm.
at 8 years old, he didn't really understand that, but it was a neutral
Mm-hmm.
response and it was true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's, some of this stuff, it takes a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So helping your kids walk through that grief process instead
Yes.
of just, oh my
Yes.
gosh, taking it all on.
And what I heard you
Yeah.
say in taking that fearless and moral inventory is
Hmm.
also partially about the inventory of the good that I brought through the process.
Yes.
Like,
Absolutely.
yes, divorce is hard, but
Right.
what did I do well through the process?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I
That's
think
really
a lot of
good.
people get stuck in the negative part of the inventory. And it's like, no, it needs to
Yeah.
be
A full
positive too.
inventory. Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
take a full inventory.
And
Yeah.
Sure.
sometimes I'll do a little future inventory and say, well, what would have happened had I stayed in that
Yeah.
marriage? Where would my
Yeah.
kiddo be?
Right.
Like,
Mm.
oh,
Right.
Yeah,
man,
for
that could
sure.
have been really, really painful for her.
Yeah.
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 You mentioned the recovery process from
Hmm.
codependency earlier.
Yeah.
What's the recovery process really look like?
So to me, there's 3 main buckets. The first is, and this is the unsexy part, redirecting that focus back to yourself because we are so other focused in our codependency. I mean, we're super good at reading the room, knowing who's feeling what, but we're not really good at knowing what we want and what we need because we're so externally focused based on survival skills of, childhood.
Mhm.
So that to me is, building self-trust, building a relationship with yourself. Like I never wanted to do that ever in my
Mhm.
recovery.
Mhm.
And I ended up, I don't know, about 10 years ago, I had a friendship suddenly crash without warning. And I realized, oh my God, I actually got addicted to somebody again. And I didn't realize it.
Mhm.
But it was
Mhm.
that humility of, oh yeah, I have more work to do.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if we're externally focused, we're still being codependent. If I'm still
Mhm.
looking at you to fill me up, then I'm in trouble, no matter who that other you is, right? My kid, my
Mhm.
boss, my husband, whatever. It doesn't,
Mhm.
it doesn't really matter. The second part is assessing our relationships. What's toxic? What are the relationships that could be salvaged if I change some of my behavior? I know there's a whole, big discussion now about cutting ties with parents. And it's like, I mean, I don't professionally support that unless the client thinks that's the only way to go. It's important to know, like, in any relationship, even with someone who's dysfunctional, you may be able to salvage it by setting more boundaries or by
Mhm.
lowering your expectations, right? Maybe you have a friend that's super selfish, but you can go to the movies and you can chit chat and it's great, but you don't offer to help them anymore because they suck you dry. Like,
Yeah.
okay, and then the last part is dealing with the family of origin issues. And that
Mm.
I usually recommend therapy for that one. You can certainly do some of it in Al-Anon with a
Mhm.
sponsor and the
Mhm.
steps, but if there's trauma, that's usually when people seek therapy.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because those family of origin issues will, like you said, we backslide. We start repeating what we
Right,
used to do, which is,
right.
sounds like possibly what happened with your friendship when you realize, I've done it again.
Mm.
Yep, yep. Very humbling.
Easy, easy to slide back into those.
Definitely. Yeah, so I'm curious. So we want to redirect back to self,
Hmm.
not being selfish, but being
Right.
self-aware is what I kind
Yes.
of heard you say. Is that right?
Yeah, because you can still give a lot. I mean, most codependent people are huge givers, and I
Mhm.
think they part of where they get stuck is they think that means they have to stop giving, and that's not it. You
Mm.
just have to give out of choice, not obligation. But
Mhm.
the codependent person is always going to give a little bit more than the average bear. I mean, that's just how
Yeah,
we're built. And that's
sure.
okay. To me, that's kind of the lovely part is that big heart. We just want boundaries around
Mhm.
that big heart so that you don't dip into creating a lot of toxic relationships.
Absolutely. So we've got that awareness. We're still giving. We're not shutting that part of ourselves down, but we're making
Right.
sure that it's not becoming toxic. Then we're taking an assessment of like which of these relationships. I loved how you said like what's toxic and where do we need to set a strong boundary, but also what could be salvaged because
Right.
doesn't mean I just oh well I'm going to clean slate. I'm cutting everybody out of my life and I'm going to
Yeah.
start over. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that. But let's
Yeah.
have an actual assessment, and then once we're able to do that, then we're going to start digging in and saying, okay, where's the root of this coming from?
Yes.
And
Right.
often that goes back to family of origin
Hmm.
challenges. Did it get all that right?
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing I would add is I think there's also a piece where people who struggle with codependency have a really hard time letting go of toxic people because they don't want to be
Mm.
alone. But
Yeah.
that's where I think detachment can be helpful. It's like
Mm.
you just maybe you don't respond right away to their message, right? Maybe you
Yeah.
stay quiet instead of giving them advice and you start disengaging a little bit more because you're not necessarily ready to end the relationship, but you also don't want to be in it very much. So,
Hmm.
sometimes people don't realize the value of silence. Like, hey, you know what? Maybe you can just back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that.
You mentioned in the beginning of our conversation that codependency is a form of over functioning. It's
Hmm.
some form or another. We're over functioning, overdoing, kind of doing for others what they should be doing for themselves.
Mm.
Right.
And one of the reasons you gave that we do that is that we don't know another way to connect.
Right.
Mm.
So what we really want is connection
Right.
with this person that we're over functioning for. What
Yeah.
are some other ways that we can connect with people if we tend to lean into
Hmm.
codependency?
Mm. Good
So
question.
I know that is a great question because I think that's what was missing for me in my own recovery is I didn't really have a connection to myself. I mean, I sort of did, like my self-esteem got better, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't really value spending time and really cultivating, like, who am I? Do I have to
Mm.
make 5 phone calls today to get support? Because that's what I was doing. I mean,
Sure.
it was silly. It was like, it was so obvious to me looking back that I
Mm.
was still seeking other people as my band-aid instead of
Mm.
like now if something happens, yeah, I'll make a call or two. But if they're not answering, I'm good. I can take a walk, I can do some writing, I can talk to God,
Mhm.
I can do other things because I'm more solid within myself. And I think that that's what gets utilized in codependency recovery is just that value of like, could you take yourself out to a movie? Could you
Mm,
start like sitting with your favorite drink and blanket and just enjoying nature in the backyard, or do something where you actually enjoy being by yourself versus
mm,
always needing that other person to validate and sustain your happiness? Because it's really hard, I think, to have healthier connections when we don't have that foundation in ourselves.
wow.
Well put.
I love that.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so helpful.
Absolutely. So, Michelle, years and years ago, Kim and I went to a conference that was about recovery because Kim was
Mm,
doing a lot of recovery work. She's shared about her addiction
yeah.
past. And I hadn't really dealt with any kind of substance addiction.
Hmm.
And so at this conference, I walked into this breakout session with the title of it of Codependency. This was a couple decades ago. And at the time, I had no idea what the heck codependency was.
Sure.
But then I came out of that going, oh my gosh, I think I'm codependent. And it
Right.
was crazy, right? I had no idea. So I wonder, there might be some people listening right now and they're thinking, huh, there's some of this that sounds a little familiar.
Hmm.
But often I think when we're in the midst of codependent experience, we have no idea that we're actually there.
Yeah.
How
Right.
does somebody listening who's maybe thinking, shoot, I'm kind of finding myself in the places that these people are talking about,
Yeah.
how do they just acknowledge and recognize, oh, yeah, maybe I am struggling with some codependency?
Yeah. Well, if they're still listening, that's a good sign, right?
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Woohoo.
You're also, your gut's probably speaking to you, right? You're probably getting like a
Mhm.
little, ooh, wow, this might be me. And,
Yeah.
you don't have to, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. Who cares how codependent you are? You may be a little, you may be a lot. I mean, whatever. But I always go to how is it impacting you today? Because that's where
Mm,
people are motivated to change. Like, well, it's
mm,
really impacting me with my kid. Okay, great. Then maybe that's your starting point. Because if they don't relate to, like maybe they're a controller, so they're really good at setting boundaries, even though they're rigid, right? They don't think they have a problem with boundaries, but maybe they're turning off their friends because of their control. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what's causing problems and that's getting their attention. So
yeah.
to me, when you listen to a podcast like this on codependency, pick what fits for you and then dive down that rabbit hole because that's where you're going to be most motivated to heal.
I love that.
That's
Yeah.
great advice.
So appreciate
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just that moment of realization of, oh shoot, I'm doing this, and I love the way you
Yeah.
said if someone's listening and in their gut, they're going, oh man, I really
Right.
relate to this.
Yeah.
And what a great question. How's that impacting me today? Like, how's it
Right.
impacting my marriage? How's it
Right.
impacting my relationship with my kids, my ex, my coworkers? Um, the other thing I appreciate that I think I just heard too is like codependency is not a label.
Hmm.
I'm not
Mm-hmm.
I'm not either codependent or not codependent necessarily, but there's a continuum in there.
Hmm.
Did
Definitely.
I hear that right? What would you
Yeah.
fix in what you
Yeah.
said?
Yeah, no, I think it is a continuum, just like narcissism. You can have
Mhm.
narcissistic traits and you can have full-blown personality disorder. With
Mm,
codependency, you might have maybe some at work where you're doing backflips for your boss, even though you'd rather not, but maybe in your other relationships it's better. I mean, usually codependency, if you really relate, it's kind of sprinkled everywhere a little
yeah,
bit, but
sure.
our awareness doesn't show that up. I mean, until years later. Like,
Mhm.
you may realize, oh, I'm codependent in my marriage, but I'm not codependent anywhere else. That's okay, right? Keep coming
Mhm.
back,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
eventually you'll get another piece of the puzzle because that's how it
yeah,
works. If we got all of it at once, it'd be way too overwhelming.
Yes.
yeah. I
Yeah,
bet.
we
I
couldn't
bet.
manage it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. What a blessing to have you with us today, Michelle. I really appreciate all your input here. If you could just give one final piece of advice to someone
Hmm.
who's thinking, "Ah,
Hmm.
maybe this is a struggle for me, what would your one piece of advice be?
I would say you're not bad, you're not wrong. You are exactly where you need to be. Because the fact that you're even considering that, hey, maybe this applies to me is the good news. That's not a bad thing. That is like so wonderful because so many people out there are not willing to do that.
No.
So that
True.
really sets you apart that, hey, wow, you're going to look under this rock and see what applies to you. And there's lots and lots you can do about it. So I really want to give them hope that you can recover one day at a time with the right tools.
I love that.
Yeah, you're not broken.
That's right.
That's right.
Come and join me. I had to get some real personal awareness. Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, that's so good. Well, Michelle, some people might be listening and going, I need to reach out and talk to Michelle because I'm struggling and I think she's got something I need. How do people reach you?
So my website is counselingrecovery.com. And I have a YouTube channel that is called Relationships That Work with Michelle Ferris. So those are probably the two main ones. I have Instagram too, that's under Counseling Recovery.
That's great. Well, we'll put links to all of that in the show notes. And I think you have kind of a great little starter point, like a freebie or something like that.
do.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah.
What is that?
Sure. So it's the 7 steps to healing one-sided relationships. And it walks you through what you can do to start unraveling these patterns and do things differently, baby steps at a time, because it's not overwhelming, but it's going to talk a little bit about boundaries, about detachment, about self-care. Like, what can you do to start getting the ball rolling towards more emotional health?
Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm assuming that's just like a free download?
Yep. Free download on my website.
Wonderful. We're going to make it super simple and we'll make sure to link directly to that as well for people to download.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to connect with you and have you here for our listeners. I know so many people are probably listening and going, yeah, I really need to examine this. And so just appreciate your thoughtfulness and your kindness in sharing with us today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. We'll talk to you soon.
Wow. We really hope that this conversation with Michelle helped you feel less alone and more equipped to notice when codependency might be showing up in your relationships.
And one of the things we appreciated most was Michelle's reminder that recognizing these patterns doesn't mean that you're bad or broken or failing.
No.
It simply means you're becoming more aware. And guess what? Awareness is where growth begins.
And in blended family life, that growth matters. When we learn to set healthier boundaries, stop over-functioning, and take responsibility for what's ours, we can show up with more clarity, calm, and connection. And if you want to hear more about how codependency impacted our marriage and how we broke free, you can find a link to episode 138 in the show notes.
That's right. And we'll include links for you to connect with Michelle, check out her YouTube channel, and even download her free resource, 7 Steps to Healing One-Sided Relationships. And be sure you're following the show on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss out on next week's Simple Step episode, where I'm going to share a little more about setting healthy boundaries. But for now, we're going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.